Good morning, everyone. For centuries, the legend of the Yeti has fascinated explorers, scientists, and adventurers. Known as the Abominable Snowman, this elusive creature has been deeply embedded in Himalayan folklore, with countless stories of sightings and unexplained footprints in the snow. Many have searched for proof, hoping to uncover the truth behind one of the world's greatest mysteries. Expeditions have brought back reports of large footprints, strange sounds, and even supposed remains of the creature. But for decades, the mystery remained unsolved. Was the Yeti a real, undiscovered species lurking in the mountains? Or was it simply a trick of the imagination? With the advancement of science, researchers finally took a new approach. Instead of relying solely on eyewitness accounts, they turned to DNA analysis. Hair samples and bones believed to belong to the Yeti were collected from monasteries and remote locations. The results were astonishing. Instead of proving the existence of a new species, the DNA linked the samples to known animals, particularly bears, Himalayan brown bears, and Tibetan blue bears. This discovery does not diminish the legend of the Yeti. Rather, it gives us a glimpse into how myths are born. The region's extreme conditions, the isolation of the Himalayas, and the presence of rare, powerful animals all contributed to the creation of a tale that has stood the test of time. Even though science has provided answers, the Yeti remains a powerful symbol of mystery, adventure, and the unknown. The search for truth reminds us that while some legends may be explained, the world still holds wonders waiting to be discovered. Throughout history, humans have been fascinated by the unknown. Some of the greatest mysteries of our world have inspired explorers to travel to the most remote places in search of answers. One such mystery that has captivated people for centuries is that of the Yeti, often referred to as the Abominable Snowman. This legendary creature is said to inhabit the snow-covered mountains of the Himalayas, a region known for its extreme weather, towering peaks, and hidden valleys. The Yeti is not just a modern-day curiosity. It is deeply rooted in the culture and folklore of the Himalayan people. For generations, local communities have spoken of a large, ape-like creature that roams the icy wilderness, sometimes glimpsed from afar or leaving behind massive footprints in the snow. Some describe it as a gentle guardian of the mountains, while others fear it as a dangerous beast. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, these stories have persisted, passed down through families, and even influencing religious beliefs. In fact, some Buddhist monasteries in Nepal and Tibet have preserved what they claim to be physical remnants of the Yeti, such as scalps or bones, further fueling speculation about its existence. The Western world became intrigued by the Yeti in the early 20th century, when mountaineers attempting to conquer Mount Everest reported seeing strange tracks high up in the snow. As news of these encounters spread, the mystery of the Yeti captured the imagination of the global public. Soon, scientists, journalists, and adventurers began organizing expeditions to find proof of this elusive creature. Over the years, the legend has inspired countless books, movies, and even government investigations, turning the Yeti into one of the most famous cryptids in the world. But what is the truth behind this age-old mystery? Is the Yeti an undiscovered species hidden in the Himalayan wilderness, or is it a case of mistaken identity and exaggeration? Today, thanks to advances in science and technology, we are closer than ever to uncovering the reality behind the legend. And what researchers have found may finally put the mystery of the Yeti to rest. The legend of the Yeti has been kept alive not just through ancient folklore, but also through numerous reported sightings over the years. From local villagers to experienced mountaineers, many have claimed to have encountered this elusive creature. These accounts, while varying in detail, share common themes: tall, upright, covered in thick fur, and capable of moving swiftly through the rugged, snow-covered terrain of the Himalayas. Some describe it as a massive, ape-like beast with enormous strength, while others insist it is more humanoid, a primitive ancestor of mankind that has survived in isolation. One of the earliest recorded accounts of a Yeti sighting in the Western world comes from 1921, when British explorer Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Berry led an expedition to Mount Everest. His team discovered a series of large, unidentifiable footprints in the snow, which their Sherpa guides attributed to the Mitokongmi, a Tibetan term meaning man-bear snowman. When the story reached the West, it was misinterpreted and sensationalized, eventually leading to the term Abominable Snowman. In 1951, another significant event fueled global fascination with the Yeti. Eric Shipton, a British mountaineer, was exploring the Everest region when he and his team came across a set of enormous footprints in the snow at an altitude of over 19,000 feet. They took detailed photographs, showing a footprint significantly larger than that of a human. These images became some of the most famous pieces of evidence supporting the existence of the Yeti. As the years passed, more mountaineers and trekkers reported strange encounters. Some described hearing eerie, guttural sounds echoing through the mountains at night, while others claimed to have seen large, shadowy figures moving swiftly through the fog. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, the first confirmed climbers to reach the summit of Mount Everest, also reported coming across large, unexplained footprints during their historic ascent. The search for the Yeti wasn't limited to individual explorers. In the late 1950s, the United States government became involved. During the Cold War, the U.S. Embassy in Nepal issued a set of formal regulations for anyone attempting to hunt the Yeti. These rules stated that any evidence of the creature must be handed over to the Nepalese authorities and that capturing or killing it required government permission. While this was likely an attempt to prevent unnecessary violence or disturbances in the region, it also fueled speculation that the Yeti was being taken seriously by global powers. Despite these reports, no clear photographic or video evidence has ever been produced to confirm the existence of the Yeti. Some expeditions have brought back alleged Yeti relics, hair, bones, and even entire scalps, which were kept in Buddhist monasteries as sacred artifacts. However, these items have remained controversial, with skeptics arguing that they belong to known animals rather than an undiscovered species. The most striking thing about Yeti stories is how widespread and persistent they are. Unlike other cryptid legends that tend to fade over time, the Yeti has continued to be a central figure in Himalayan culture and global folklore. Even with modern technology and satellite imaging, the vast, snow-covered expanse of the Himalayas remains largely unexplored, leaving room for continued belief that something unknown could still be lurking in its depths. The mystery of the Yeti has not only intrigued adventurers and storytellers, but has also captured the attention of scientists and researchers. While many mythical creatures remain confined to folklore, the Yeti has consistently drawn serious interest from the scientific community. The remote and unexplored terrain of the Himalayas, combined with centuries of reported sightings, made the search for the Yeti a fascinating challenge for zoologists, anthropologists, and geneticists alike. One of the main reasons scientists have taken the Yeti legend seriously is the possibility that an unknown species could still exist in the isolated regions of the Himalayas. The mountains are home to a diverse range of unique wildlife, some of which were once thought to be extinct or non-existent. The giant panda, for example, was considered a myth by Western scientists until it was officially discovered in 1869. Similarly, the saola, also known as the Asian unicorn, was only identified in 1992 in the dense forests of Vietnam and Laos. If such rare creatures could remain hidden for centuries, some scientists believed that the Yeti, too, could be a surviving species yet to be classified. Over the decades, scientists have approached the Yeti mystery in different ways. Some have conducted field expeditions, searching for physical evidence such as footprints, hair samples, and skeletal remains. Others have studied environmental factors, questioning whether a large, unidentified primate-like creature could realistically survive in the extreme conditions of the Himalayas. Skeptics argue that the region's harsh climate and lack of sufficient food sources make it unlikely that a large, warm-blooded mammal could remain undiscovered for so long. One of the most notable scientific investigations took place in the 1950s when Sir Edmund Hillary, after successfully climbing Mount Everest, led an expedition specifically to search for the Yeti. Hillary and his team visited Buddhist monasteries that claimed to possess Yeti relics, such as skulls and scalps. They analyzed these artifacts, but the results were inconclusive, with some findings suggesting that the materials belong to known animals such as bears or goats. In the following decades, technological advancements allowed for more sophisticated investigations. Instead of relying solely on physical observation, researchers turned to DNA analysis to examine supposed Yeti samples. Hair strands, bones, and tissue samples collected from remote Himalayan locations were subjected to genetic testing, offering a new and scientific approach to solving the mystery. These tests aim to determine whether the samples belong to an unknown species, or if they could be linked to already classified animals. Despite the skepticism, some researchers held onto the idea that the Yeti could be a relict population of an ancient hominid species. Theories emerged that the Yeti might be a descendant of Gigantopithecus, a prehistoric, giant ape that lived in Asia hundreds of thousands of years ago. Fossil evidence suggests that Gigantopithecus could have stood over 10 feet tall and weighed up to 1,200 pounds. While mainstream science considers it extinct, some have speculated that a small, surviving population could have adapted to the high-altitude regions of the Himalayas. However, no definitive fossil or genetic evidence has ever supported this claim. As scientific curiosity grew, so did the urgency to separate fact from fiction. Was the Yeti a real, undiscovered species, or simply a cultural myth reinforced by misidentifications and exaggerations? Could science finally put an end to a mystery that had persisted for centuries? These questions led researchers to conduct groundbreaking genetic studies that would ultimately bring us closer to solving the enigma of the Yeti once and for all. For centuries, people have claimed to have encountered the Yeti, but what concrete evidence has actually been gathered? Over the years, various expeditions and individuals have brought back what they believe to be physical proof of the Yeti's existence. These pieces of evidence range from footprints and hair samples to bones, and even entire supposed Yeti scalps. However, while these findings have kept the mystery alive, they have also led to controversy and debate. One of the earliest and most famous pieces of evidence came from British explorer Eric Shipton's 1951 Everest expedition. While trekking through the snow-covered slopes of the Himalayas, Shipton and his team came across a set of massive footprints. These prints, much larger than those of a human, were photographed alongside an ice axe for scale. The images caused a global sensation, sparking widespread speculation that an unidentified creature was roaming the mountains. Some experts suggested that the tracks were made by a large, unknown primate, while skeptics argued that they were simply distorted bear tracks, enlarged due to the melting and refreezing of snow. In addition to footprints, supposed Yeti relics have been collected from various Himalayan monasteries. Several temples in Nepal and Tibet claim to possess Yeti remains, including skulls and scalps. In the 1950s, Sir Edmund Hillary and Desmond Doig visited the Kumjung Monastery, where they were shown a Yeti scalp that had been preserved for generations. They brought the relic to be analyzed by scientists, only to discover that it was likely made from the skin of a Himalayan goat or a type of antelope. Similar discoveries were made in other monasteries, where alleged Yeti bones and other body parts were later identified as belonging to known animals. Hair samples have also played a crucial role in the search for the Yeti. Many expeditions have recovered strands of fur from remote caves, tree bark, and even snow-covered trails. These samples were sent for laboratory testing in an attempt to determine their origin. Early analyses, conducted with limited technology, often yielded inconclusive results. Some scientists speculated that the hair belonged to an unknown species, while others argued that it was from common animals such as bears or yaks. However, as DNA analysis improved in the 21st century, researchers were finally able to extract genetic material from the samples and compare them to known species. Beyond physical samples, numerous reports of Yeti sightings have been supported by photographs and video footage. However, the quality of these images has always been questionable. Many photographs show nothing more than blurry figures in the distance, which could easily be mistaken for shadows, rocks, or even other animals. Video evidence, while intriguing, has often suffered from the same issues: poor resolution, shaky camera work, and unclear subjects that make it difficult to draw any definitive conclusions. Audio recordings have also been used as evidence. Some researchers claim to have captured strange, guttural vocalizations and deep growls echoing through the Himalayan valleys at night. These sounds, unlike those of any known local animals, have been presented as potential proof that an unidentified creature is still out there. However, without clear, verified sources, the audio evidence remains highly speculative. One of the more unusual pieces of evidence includes reports from mountaineers and locals who have experienced strange, unsettling encounters in the mountains. Some claim to have seen large, shadowy figures moving swiftly through the fog, while others describe the sensation of being watched or followed. There have even been accounts of climbers waking up to find their food supplies mysteriously disturbed, with large footprints surrounding their camps. Though intriguing, such stories rely heavily on personal testimony and lack the solid proof required to confirm the Yeti's existence. Despite decades of collecting footprints, hair samples, bones, and eyewitness reports, the evidence for the Yeti remains inconclusive. While many findings have been debunked as hoaxes or misidentifications of known animals, some samples have continued to puzzle scientists, leaving the door open for further investigation. However, with modern advancements in genetic testing, researchers have taken a new approach to solving the mystery, one that would provide shocking results. For decades, the search for the Yeti relied heavily on eyewitness accounts, footprints, and mysterious artifacts, but none of these provided definitive proof of its existence. The lack of clear evidence frustrated scientists and skeptics alike. However, in recent years, advancements in DNA analysis have allowed researchers to take a new and scientific approach to solving this age-old mystery. Instead of relying on blurry photographs or unverified reports, scientists turned to genetics, analyzing supposed Yeti hair, bones, and tissue samples to uncover the truth. One of the first significant attempts to study Yeti DNA came in 2013 when Oxford University geneticist Brian Sykes conducted a groundbreaking investigation. He and his team collected and analyzed multiple hair samples that were claimed to belong to the Yeti, sourcing them from various locations in the Himalayas. The samples had been preserved for years in monasteries and private collections, waiting for modern science to provide answers. Sykes subjected these hairs to mitochondrial DNA sequencing, a technique that allows scientists to trace genetic lineage and identify species with remarkable accuracy. The results were surprising. Instead of belonging to an unknown primate or an ancient human ancestor, as some had hoped, the DNA matched that of known bear species. Specifically, Sykes found that some samples closely resembled the DNA of an ancient polar bear species, Ursus marinimus, which lived thousands of years ago. This finding led to the hypothesis that an unknown bear hybrid, possibly a cross between a polar bear and a Himalayan brown bear, could be responsible for many of the Yeti sightings. Such a hybrid would have unusual physical characteristics, possibly explaining why some observers mistook it for something entirely different. Following Sykes' research, other scientists took an even broader approach. In 2017, a team led by Charlotte Lindqvist, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Buffalo, conducted a more extensive genetic study. Her team gathered 24 samples, including hair, bones, teeth, skin, and even fecal matter, all reportedly linked to the Yeti. These samples were sourced from Nepal and Tibet and had been collected by researchers, climbers, and local villagers over the years. Lindqvist's team subjected the samples to high-precision DNA analysis, comparing them to a vast genetic database of known animals. The results were conclusive. None of the samples belonged to an unknown species. Instead, they were all identified as belonging to bears, specifically Himalayan brown bears, Tibetan brown bears, and Asian black bears. One of the samples even came from a domestic dog, further proving that some so-called Yeti remains had been misidentified or sensationalized. These findings marked a turning point in the scientific study of the Yeti. The genetic evidence provided a rational explanation for many of the alleged Yeti encounters. Rather than a mythical creature, the Yeti was likely a combination of different bear species inhabiting the remote and rugged terrain of the Himalayas. Brown bears and black bears are known to stand on their hind legs, which, in misty or snowy conditions, could easily give the impression of a large, bipedal creature. Additionally, their footprints, when partially melted or distorted by wind and snow, could resemble the giant tracks that explorers like Eric Shipton had photographed decades earlier. While some researchers had hoped that DNA analysis might reveal the presence of an unknown primate or even a surviving population of an ancient human relative, the genetic results firmly placed the Yeti in the realm of zoology rather than mythology. However, this scientific breakthrough did not completely erase the legend. Many locals and cryptozoologists still argue that the possibility of an undiscovered species cannot be ruled out entirely, especially in such a vast and unexplored region as the Himalayas. Even with advanced DNA techniques, only a limited number of samples have been tested, leaving room for speculation about what else might be out there. Despite the strong scientific evidence linking the Yeti to known bear species, the fascination with this mysterious creature continues. The DNA analysis provided answers, but it also raised new questions. Could there still be an undiscovered species hidden in the mountains? Have all Yeti-related samples been properly tested? And if the Yeti legend is truly based on bears, why do stories of a mysterious humanoid creature persist across multiple generations and cultures? For decades, the search for the Yeti was driven by the hope of discovering an unknown species, perhaps an ancient hominid, a giant primate, or even a creature that had eluded classification by modern science. However, as DNA testing became more sophisticated, scientists began uncovering surprising findings that changed the narrative surrounding the legendary beast. The results of these studies not only challenged long-held beliefs about the Yeti, but also provided a fascinating insight into the wildlife of the Himalayas and the way myths are born from real-world phenomena. One of the most shocking discoveries came from the DNA analysis of hair and bone samples that were once thought to belong to the Yeti. As researchers examined these materials using cutting-edge genetic sequencing, they found that none of them came from an unidentified species. Instead, the majority of the samples were linked to different species of bears native to the Himalayan region. Specifically, scientists found genetic matches to the Himalayan brown bear, Ursus arctos isabelinus, the Tibetan brown bear, Ursus arctos pronosus, and the Asian black bear, Ursus thibetanus. Some samples even showed links to a now-extinct species of polar bear, raising intriguing questions about ancient hybridization between bear species in the region. The revelation that the Yeti legend could be tied to known bear species was unexpected for many. After all, for generations, eyewitness accounts had described a tall, bipedal, ape-like creature roaming the snowy wilderness. How could these descriptions be reconciled with the reality of Himalayan bears? Scientists began to consider the ways in which environmental factors, psychological influences, and cultural storytelling could have played a role in shaping the Yeti myth. One explanation for the Yeti's supposed humanoid form is the way bears behaved in the wild. When standing on their hind legs, Himalayan brown bears can appear remarkably tall, sometimes reaching heights of over 7 feet. In misty or snowy conditions, where visibility is poor, a bear standing upright may easily be mistaken for something more human-like. Additionally, bears are known to walk short distances on 2 legs, especially when scanning their surroundings. If a startled traveler or mountaineer glimpsed a bear briefly in such a stance, their mind might fill in the gaps, reinforcing the idea of a mysterious, bipedal creature. Another surprising discovery related to footprints, one of the most widely cited pieces of evidence supporting the existence of the Yeti. Scientists analyzing photographs of large footprints, such as those captured by Eric Shipton's 1951 expedition, realized that the tracks could be explained by a combination of natural processes. In cold, snowy environments, bear tracks often distort over time as the snow melts and refreezes. This process, known as snow distortion, can enlarge the size of a footprint, making it appear far larger than its original form. Additionally, when a bear places its hind foot into the print left by its front foot, it can create a double impression that vaguely resembles a human-like footprint. Perhaps even more surprising than the scientific findings themselves was the cultural response to them. While many in the scientific community saw these results as the definitive answer to the Yeti mystery, others, including local communities in Nepal and Tibet, continued to believe in the creature's existence. The Yeti was not just a scientific puzzle to be solved, but also an integral part of Himalayan folklore and tradition. For many locals, the Yeti is a spiritual entity rather than a biological one, a guardian of the mountains rather than a mere undiscovered animal. The discoveries also raised new questions about the history of the region's wildlife. The genetic link between some supposed Yeti samples and an ancient polar bear species hinted at the possibility that hybrid bears once roamed the Himalayas. This suggested that ancient species might have interbred, creating new variations of bears that had since disappeared or become extremely rare. If such hybrids had existed, they could have had unusual physical characteristics, perhaps explaining why people who encountered them believed they were seeing something extraordinary. Despite the overwhelming evidence pointing to bears as the origin of the Yeti legend, the story remains alive. The scientific discoveries have solved many aspects of the mystery, but they have not erased the sense of wonder and curiosity that surround the legend. Even with modern DNA analysis providing rational explanations, the question lingers: could there still be something out there that has yet to be discovered? The mystery of the Yeti is not just a scientific puzzle, it is deeply woven into the cultural and spiritual traditions of the Himalayan people. For centuries, the Yeti has been more than just a creature of the mountains. It has been a guardian, a warning, a sacred being, and a symbol of the unknown forces that rule the highest peaks of the world. Even as modern science attempts to explain the legend through genetics and zoology, the power of folklore continues to shape people's beliefs about the existence of this elusive being. The stories of the Yeti can be traced back thousands of years in the oral traditions of Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, and surrounding regions. In Tibetan Buddhism, for example, the Yeti is often regarded as a spiritual creature rather than a mere animal. Some Himalayan monks believe that the Yeti possesses supernatural abilities, such as invisibility or the power to move between different dimensions. In some legends, the Yeti is seen as a protector of nature, watching over the mountains and ensuring that humans do not overstep their boundaries. Other stories describe it as a dangerous being, attacking those who venture too far into the wilderness or disrespect the sacred lands. One of the most significant reasons the Yeti legend has endured for so long is the isolation of the Himalayan region. For much of history, the remote villages scattered throughout the mountains had little contact with the outside world. These communities relied on oral storytelling to pass down their knowledge, history, and warnings. In an environment where survival depends on respecting nature, the legend of the Yeti served an important purpose. It discouraged people, especially children, from wandering too far into the dangerous terrain where avalanches, hidden crevasses, and wild animals posed real threats. In this way, the Yeti functioned as a kind of cautionary tale, reinforcing the idea that humans should respect the mountains and their hidden dangers. The influence of Yeti folklore is also evident in religious artifacts and sacred relics. Several Buddhist monasteries in Nepal and Tibet claim to possess Yeti relics, including skulls, bones, and even preserved scalps. Pilgrims and monks have long regarded these objects with reverence, believing them to be proof of the creature's existence. While scientific examinations have often revealed these relics to belong to known animals, such as bears or mountain goats, their spiritual significance remains unchanged. For many, the truth of the Yeti is not about physical evidence but about faith, tradition, and the mysteries of the natural world. Beyond its role in Himalayan culture, the Yeti legend also reflects broader human psychology. Every culture in the world has myths of wild, unknown creatures that live on the edges of civilization. From the Sasquatch of North America to the Bigfoot of the Pacific Northwest, from the Almas of Central Asia to the Barmanu of Pakistan, the idea of a hidden, elusive, humanoid being appears repeatedly in folklore. Anthropologists suggest that these stories fulfill a deep-seated human need to believe in the unknown, to imagine that there are still mysteries left to be uncovered in an increasingly explored and mapped world. The Yeti also plays a role in shaping national identity and tourism in the Himalayan regions. In Nepal, for example, the legend of the Yeti has become a source of fascination for visitors. Hotels, trekking companies, and even airports use the Yeti as a marketing symbol, drawing adventurous travelers who hope to catch a glimpse of the legendary creature. Some expeditions still venture into the mountains specifically in search of the Yeti, blending scientific curiosity with the thrill of the unknown. In this sense, the Yeti is not just a legend. It is also an economic and cultural asset, adding to the mystique of the Himalayas and attracting those who seek adventure in the world's highest peaks. Despite the findings of modern science, the Yeti legend has not faded away. Instead, it has adapted. Today, believers argue that just because many supposed Yeti samples have been linked to bears does not mean that all accounts can be dismissed. Some suggest that the Yeti is not a single creature but a range of different beings, including undiscovered primates, spiritual entities, and ancient humanoid species that may have once existed alongside early humans. The persistence of these beliefs shows that folklore is not easily erased by science. The human imagination, deeply rooted in history and cultural identity, continues to shape the story of the Yeti in ways that go beyond mere biological evidence. The legend of the Yeti existed for centuries among the Himalayan people, passed down through oral traditions, religious teachings, and local folklore. However, it was not until Western explorers arrived in the region that the Yeti became a global phenomenon. Their encounters, whether real or exaggerated, captured the public's imagination and transformed the Yeti from a regional legend into one of the most famous cryptids in history. The role of these explorers, along with the media's sensationalized reporting, played a crucial role in shaping how the world came to view the Yeti. The earliest Western references to the Yeti date back to the 19th century, when British officials stationed in India and Tibet heard stories from local Sherpas and monks. However, it wasn't until the early 20th century, as mountaineering expeditions into the Himalayas became more frequent, that reports of strange, humanoid creatures began reaching newspapers and scientific journals. The towering, snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas, largely unexplored and filled with unknown dangers, provided the perfect setting for tales of a mysterious beast lurking in the wilderness. One of the first major Yeti-related events to capture international attention occurred in 1921 during a British expedition led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Barry. While attempting to climb Mount Everest, his team came across a series of large footprints in the snow. Howard Barry's Sherpa guides attributed the tracks to the Mito Kongmi, a Tibetan term often translated as man-bear snow creature. The British press, eager to make the story more exciting, mistranslated the term, turning it into the Abominable Snowman, a name that would stick and become the foundation of the modern Yeti myth. In 1951, the legend gained even more credibility when British mountaineer Eric Shipton took the now famous photographs of a large footprint in the snow. Shipton and his team were exploring a remote region of Nepal when they stumbled upon the enormous tracks. The footprint, far larger than a human foot, was photographed next to an ice axe for scale, making it appear all the more dramatic. When these images were published, they spread rapidly across the world, convincing many that the Yeti was real. Scientists, adventurers, and journalists all weighed in, speculating whether this was evidence of an undiscovered species. The 1950s and 1960s saw a boom in Yeti-related exploration, with many Western scientists and adventurers launching expeditions specifically to find the creature. Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man to summit Mount Everest, led an expedition in 1960 to investigate the Yeti mystery. His team visited Buddhist monasteries that claimed to have Yeti relics, including a supposed Yeti scalp. However, upon analysis, these artifacts were found to belong to known animals such as bears and goats. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the idea of the Yeti continued to grow in popularity. The mid-20th century also saw the rise of the Yeti in popular culture. Newspapers and magazines regularly ran articles about new sightings and theories, while books and documentaries presented dramatic accounts of encounters. In 1957, the Walt Disney Company even released a nature documentary called The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas, further embedding the Yeti into Western imagination. Fictional movies followed, with Hollywood depicting the Yeti as a monstrous beast, often portrayed as a threat to humans. These portrayals, while entertaining, contributed to the misunderstanding of the Yeti, turning it from a spiritual or folkloric figure into a fearsome cryptid. The fascination with the Yeti was not limited to entertainment. It also attracted serious scientific inquiry. During the Cold War, both American and Soviet researchers took an interest in the Yeti, believing that if an unknown primate existed, it could provide insights into human evolution. Some theories suggested that the Yeti could be a surviving population of Gigantopithecus, a prehistoric giant ape that lived in Asia hundreds of thousands of years ago. Others speculated that the Yeti was a relict hominid, possibly related to Neanderthals or Denisovans, early human relatives that had long since gone extinct. These ideas, while intriguing, were never supported by definitive fossil or genetic evidence. Even as DNA analysis in the 21st century began providing scientific explanations, such as identifying many Yeti samples as belonging to bears, the legend continued to thrive. This persistence is largely due to the way Western explorers and the media framed the Yeti as a thrilling, unsolved mystery. Television shows, online documentaries, and adventure tourism have kept the story alive, ensuring that the Yeti remains a symbol of the unknown. To this day, there are still expeditions into the Himalayas searching for evidence, driven by the same curiosity that first captivated the world nearly a century ago. The influence of Western explorers and the media has played a defining role in shaping how the world perceives the Yeti. Without their reports, photographs, and sensationalized storytelling, the legend might have remained a regional myth, known only to the people of the Himalayas. Instead, it became an international mystery, inspiring generations of adventurers, scientists, and enthusiasts to search for the truth behind the Abominable Snowman. Despite decades of exploration, research, and scientific advancements, the mystery of the Yeti has not been fully put to rest. While DNA analysis, environmental studies, and logical explanations have provided strong evidence that many Yeti sightings are linked to known animals, particularly bears, some unanswered questions remain. This gap between scientific explanations and lingering doubts has fueled continued fascination with the creature, keeping the debate alive even in an era of advanced genetic testing and satellite mapping. One of the strongest arguments supporting a scientific explanation for the Yeti is the overwhelming evidence that many Yeti sightings and physical remains belong to Himalayan bear species. The extensive DNA analysis conducted in the last 2 decades has repeatedly confirmed that hair, bones, and other biological samples linked to the Yeti match known bear species, such as the Himalayan brown bear and the Tibetan blue bear. Additionally, the behavior of these bears provides logical explanations for many Yeti encounters. Bears can walk on their hind legs for short periods, especially when they are startled or trying to see over obstacles, which could make them appear more humanoid from a distance. Their footprints, particularly in melting snow, can be distorted in ways that resemble large, human-like tracks. Furthermore, high-altitude environments like the Himalayas are prone to optical illusions and environmental distortions. In extreme weather conditions, blowing snow, shifting ice, and limited visibility can make ordinary animals look much larger or more mysterious than they actually are. Mountaineers and travelers suffering from altitude sickness, exhaustion, or hypoxia may also experience hallucinations, leading them to believe they have seen a strange, unknown creature when, in reality, they encountered a bear, a shadow, or even their own footprints altered by the terrain. While these scientific explanations are compelling, they have not fully convinced everyone. There remain unanswered questions that continue to puzzle both researchers and enthusiasts. One of the biggest mysteries is why, despite the lack of physical evidence, the Yeti legend has persisted across multiple cultures and time periods. Myths of large, hairy, humanoid creatures living in remote mountain regions are not limited to the Himalayas. They appear in folklore from different parts of the world, including the Bigfoot of North America, the Almas of Central Asia, and the Yeren of China. Could all these stories be based on misidentified animals, or do they suggest the existence of a long-forgotten species that once roamed the Earth? Another lingering question is whether all Yeti-related biological samples have been properly tested. Most DNA studies have analyzed only a limited number of samples, many of which were already suspected to be of bear origin. Could there still be unknown primate or hominid DNA waiting to be discovered? Some scientists argue that unless a comprehensive survey of all potential Yeti evidence is conducted, including samples from lesser-known locations, there is still a small possibility that something new could be found. There is also the question of why some eyewitness accounts describe behaviors and physical traits that do not match any known bear species. While it is easy to dismiss one or two sightings as misidentifications, there have been multiple reports of bipedal creatures moving quickly across mountain slopes, avoiding human contact, and even displaying intelligence beyond what is expected of bears. These reports, while anecdotal, raise curiosity about whether something more than just bears could be behind the Yeti legend. Beyond biology, some researchers believe the Yeti mystery may hold anthropological significance. There are theories suggesting that the Yeti legend could be linked to extinct human relatives, such as the Denisovans or Neanderthals. These ancient species are believed to have coexisted with early modern humans for thousands of years, and remnants of their existence have been found in Siberia, Tibet, and other parts of Asia. Could the stories of the Yeti be distant cultural memories of interactions with these extinct hominins? If so, the legend of the Yeti may be one of the oldest surviving myths about humanity's early encounters with other intelligent species. The ongoing debate between scientific explanations and unanswered questions has created a fascinating dynamic in Yeti research. On one hand, modern science has done much to debunk many aspects of the myth, linking it to bears, environmental distortions, and folklore. On the other hand, the sheer persistence of the legend, combined with occasional unexplainable encounters, has kept the mystery alive. Even in an age of advanced technology, satellite imaging, and genetic testing, there are still vast, unexplored areas in the Himalayas where something unknown could be hiding.